is to be extremely flexible. Capital is very flexible and can do all kinds of things, and we are often not flexible enough on the left. There is a tendency towards dogmatism. I have my position, here it is, stay there forevermore, I'm right, even though you don't get anywhere. So I think that, again, what we need to do is to construct institutions on the left that are flexible, can counter various moves of capital. I'd like to go back to what I think the origins of Trump and Bolsonaro and all the rest of it is, and I'm going to use one word to describe it, which is very important, I think, to describe the qualities of urban life. And that word I use is alienation. And this is a sort of old Marxist word. It has complicated history in Marxism, which maybe I can talk about later tomorrow. But by alienation, we're seeing that people are alienated insofar as they have work. They are alienated by their work because most work these days is meaningless. So we're not simply dealing with lack of jobs, but we're dealing with a situation of lack of meaningful jobs. There was a survey in the United States that showed that 70% of workers either totally hated their work or were totally indifferent to it. It surprises me that there are 30% who actually like working. But the same thing applies to the qualities of urban life. People are alienated by conditions of urban living, alienated by traffic problems, lack of mobility, lack of access. And they're also alienated from a political process. I don't know how it is here, but in the United States, the political process typically runs that there's a lot of mobilization at the time of elections. The election's over, it all disappears. We've seen tremendous urban movements over the last 30 years. And they rise and they fall. I remember the demonstrations against the war on February the 15th of 2003. Millions of people on the streets of Madrid, Barcelona, London, Paris, even in New York, but we never could count them in New York because we weren't allowed to move. And you kind of say to yourself, what would have happened if those millions of people had stayed on the streets? And we're seeing some of that going on in Hong Kong right now. People are staying on the streets. I think it's dangerous what they're doing because at some point I think China will move in militarily. But nevertheless, staying on the streets. In other words, it seems that the left is often very good at mobilization, but is not so good at organization. Because it's organization that actually is critical. And I think organization and working together, and this is why I think this collection of left organizations, which is collaborating here, is very important. And I think that they can collaborate by asking the question, for example, all right, let's suppose one of us becomes mayor of Rio, then what would we do? And how would we do it? And that is where a lot of thinking needs to be sort of, and you could just have ongoing panels and discussions over these kinds of questions. Because there are ways of thinking of it. You have, 12 million unemployed, you said, a crisis of affordable housing. Well, okay, I mean, there's some very good programs in Uruguay of building social housing by people themselves doing the building. Learning the trade, in other words, the unemployed are put to work building their own housing. And it solves two problems at the same time. In order to do that, you need the land, and you need the help to assemble the materials and the training. And also the help that I'm sure you would get free from the architecture departments and the engineering people and so on, which happens in Uruguay. So there are things that could be tangibly done immediately at that level. But the bigger problem is, as I suggested, alienation. Alienated populations behave historically in very peculiar ways. First off, they tend to act in terms of what we call passive-aggressive withdrawals. Don't bother me, it's all bullshit, just fuck off, politics is terrible, That's what you get. But then something happens, and then they get angry. And they go out and they smash windows and they trash things. And what the fascist mentality does is to pick up on that. Say, okay, you're angry. I'm going to help you express your anger. It's immigrants, or it's black people, or it's welfare cheats, or it's, they're bringing the system down. And it's a manipulation of alienated populations. And I think the left has to figure that it's dealing, and how it will deal with alienated populations, and get past that passive-aggressive withdrawal, and get past that and channel the anger into a constructive process of actually revitalization of the organizations of civil society which are going to create a better world. That seems to me to be crucial. One final point. There are crises looming. I give you one. The level of indebtedness globally is now a real serious problem. The global debt right now is equivalent to 225% of global GDP. Now, that level of debt 30 years ago would have been a signal for the IMF to intervene and to get people to clean it all up. The IMF can't intervene because, the US owns the IMF, and the US is very much part of the problem. But the total debt right now, if you take that and you divide it by the total population on planet Earth, it says that every single person on planet Earth owes more than $80,000. Did you know you owed $80,000? Every single one of you? And how the hell are you going to pay it back? How the hell is it going to be paid back? Well, actually, there are three ways you can pay it back. One of them, if you want to know what it's like, it's called Greece. Go look at what happened to Greece. It's appalling. Pensions were cancelled, standards of living are cut in half, nobody has any jobs, the unemployment rate is around 50%. Austerity politics. And everybody said, right at the beginning, the Greek debt is unpayable. And the German finance minister said, yeah, but they're going to have to pay it anyway. And they're still paying it, even though they have some slightly better news. I would say Brazil, it seems to me, is half Greece. You haven't got to the full Greece yet. So that's one way to do it. The second is by devaluation. That is destruction of value. And that can occur, and this is why war can be significant and all the other things can be significant. So devaluation, but that's uncomfortable to live with, extremely uncomfortable. And the only third way to deal with it is by massive inflation. You inflate away the debt. You have all of that debt, well, you make money worthless, and so the debt is worthless. So you have those three options. And they're what's lurking in the wings right now. Everybody in the capitalist world is nervous. And part of the problem here is, where does power lie in our contemporary society? I always go back to when Clinton was elected president. And he's laid out his economic ideas for his administration. His advisor, who came from Goldman Sachs, said, you can't do that. He said, why not? And the advisor said, Wall Street and the bondholders won't let you. So Clinton came in promising universal health care and affordable housing, and he gave us NAFTA, and he gave us the reform of welfare and criminal, he did a neoliberal program, totally. And this is kind of a classic, in which what we see is that the state is controlled by the financiers. And right now the bondholders control the state apparatus. Go ask the Greeks if their government meant anything. No, government didn't mean anything. Who ran the show was the IMF and the European Bank and all the rest of it. Finance actually controls the state. And to the degree that finance controls the state, we've got this kind of situation where the financiers who have all of the debt in their pockets and are extracting money from all of you, the financiers are actually dominating the state. Right, I'll be there in 1 second. The only country in the world where the state controls finance is China. China has the 4 largest banks in the world, and they do what the government tells them to do. So that says to us, we should actually get like China, and we should actually nationalize the banks, yes, control the banks, and get the financiers off controlling the state apparatus, because they're the ones. They are the ones who are actually funding people like Bolsonaro and so on, because they figure that is a good way to hold on to power as much as they can. But there is this big problem lurking in the background as to what the hell is going to happen to this massive increase in the total indebtedness of global capitalism. Just deposit $80,000 as you go out of the door and you'll be debt-free.